Hey, Go Be Society. Welcome and happy March. This month, March, we are going to be dedicating the lives to something very near and dear to, it seems like, everyone's heart, because I've already gotten so much more feedback. And so welcome. What are we dedicating March to? Empowerment. And I can tell you right now that empowerment is a very, very broad category. But the moment that I think many of you are really not so empowered is when your children are having temper tantrums or fits or really having a very difficult time. And so tonight is going to be the start of really trying to delve in and understand what we can do when our children or our loved ones or ourselves or people around us are having a very difficult time and melting down, temper tantruming, having a fit. You know, every family has a different way to call this experience when your child or yourself are crying and on the floor and having a fit and kicking and screaming or slamming doors, using bad language. And so every family calls it something else. The questions and the comments that I got were, how do I stay calm when my child is having a meltdown? Or how do I stay calm when my child is rolling around on the floor and screaming? Or what do I do to keep myself calm when my children are having temper tantrums? So clearly, this is something where people are experiencing all the time, and everyone calls it something else. So tonight is really going to be about what to do. How do we empower ourselves when we are feeling really powerless or annoyed, upset, all the above? So to start with, I want to be able to answer the question, what do I do when my child or my children are having fit? How do I stay calm? And really staying calm under those circumstances, we're going to start with that because I got so much feedback about that question. And then we're going to move on to a little bit more with what it really means to have this temper tantrum, fit, meltdown, whatever you want to call it. So staying calm. Okay. How do we do the impossible, the superhuman feat of staying calm under a very difficult situation? So two things to remember. The first is what staying calm really means. So stay and calm. You guys know me already. You know that my mnemonics, there's always something that you can, in the moment, hold on to. So, hey, Naomi Nachman. So here's what staying calm, the mnemonic, really means. So stay is, S stands for stop. If you can just stop, pause, put yourself on pause. You see your child having a fit. You go into stay calm, S, pause, stop. Do not react, okay? T is take 20 deep breaths. That's it. Everything that can be answered can be done. Just take 20 deep breaths. What that will do, and I've spoken about this before, is it's going to bring you back to rational brain working, emotional brain not being the only thing to impact on your life. You do not want to be emotionally charged up when the situation is emotional. So S, stop. Just put yourself on pause. T, take 20 deep breaths. Not more than that, just 20. A is literally just for a moment, go away. And what do I mean by that? So if you can walk away, that's okay. Walk away, close the door, unless of course there's a safety issue. The 1 or 2 seconds that you are going to walk away is really, oh, thank you, Only Simclas. is really important. Okay. Now, let's say you can't walk away or your children are too young, or it just doesn't seem to make sense to walk away, because I'm saying something in a, kind of a theoretical situation, but, people are hurt, are upset and crying, and you're like, well, I'm supposed to walk away. So there's also mentally walking away. There's literally finding in advance of this, of course, because in the moment, like, you're not, you can't check yourself out because you're not in that mind frame. But essentially, it would be really good to be able in advance, like now that we're talking about it, think to yourself, where would I want to put myself? Where would I want to be? Not in this situation. Like, would I want to be on the beach, reading a book with the sun beating on me? Like, just really channeling that away feeling, just to take it down. And the why is, yes, I got this. You got this. You got this. You got this. Why? Because it's really important. And we're going to talk about like what you actually can do, but you want to be calm in the moment to be able to do what you have to do when your child or your children are having fits. Now that's the stay part. That's like the actions or the mind frame to take on. But here's the important part is the calm. And what does calm stand for? Calm stands for children always learning from mommy, or children always learning from the model. And what does that mean? You, in this moment, when your children are having a fit, this is your key teaching moment. What do I mean by that? Your children, we are going to go through what they're supposed to do in a moment of emotional unrest, because that's clearly what a fit, a meltdown, or a temper tantrum is. And so if you react in opposition or opposite to what you want your children to ultimately do, that's not going to work. So you, by doing this stay part, are doing the essential calm part. Those things are really important. So again, stop, pause, take 20 deep breaths. A is away, okay? And you got this. Why? For the calm. Because children are always learning from their model, from mommy. Okay, so that was just to start off what we're talking about tonight. So really, what is this meltdown, fit, temper tantrum that children seem to go through all the time? And the truth is, as adults, we go through it too. It just looks a little different. So many of you, the feedback that I've been getting, and just, I even know from patients and just experience, many of you kind of focus really on the behaviors. So they were rolling around on the floor and they were screaming, they were hitting each other, like as though those behaviors are really what it's all about. But guys, I am here to tell you that is really the middle of the story. That is not the story. The story actually started earlier with Once Upon a Time, and it then ends with happily ever after or unhappily ever after. The behavior that you guys are recognizing, the fit, the rolling around on the floor, that is the middle part. That is the part that you might be focused on because, okay, that is an exciting part of the story, but it is by no means the beginning or the end. And so if we just focus on that part, then we're really not going to be able to deal with fits or meltdowns or temper tantrums. So let's go through. What is it? What's the beginning part? So the beginning part, are what we call triggers. Anything that kind of comes before, just like A is the first letter of the alphabet. So it's time to think about my A's, like the things in the beginning, the things that actually set the story in motion. And towards that end, what are things that set the story in motion? Well, if you really go back to what came before the fit, so it could have been hunger, sleeplessness. It could be a sensory overload, meaning too much stimulation into the senses, like their eyes. So bright lights, loud noises, overwhelming experience. It could be something that was hard on their ego, or, they were disappointed. Things of that nature are really, really important to think about, because those are the things that, honestly, that's what sets things in motion. And why do we even want to know that? Why do we want to know that there was a lack of structure, that my child didn't know like what was supposed to be happening, and so they were kind of thrown by that? Why do I care? So like I said, that's what starts the stage. That's what really starts things up. And so if you don't focus on that, then you're going to lead to a lot of behaviors that could otherwise be prevented and worked on if you thought about and considered the A's, everything that came before. So it really is important to consider that we have the A, then we have the B, which is the behavior, and then we have the C. And what's C? C are the consequences. It's the results. It's what happens at the end. Was my child given attention to what they did? Were they given punishment? Were they given reward? What were they able to vent their frustration? Were they able to bond better? Because everything like that, all of that is really going to impact on the story that I create. And if I'm going to continue to have fits, temper tantrums, and meltdowns. So really, we have to understand that the full story is the A, the B, and the C. Now, all fits, temper tantrums, and meltdowns are really not the same. And we can't treat them the same way either. So if my story is kind of like this very special story that never happened before, if my children are totally perfect and only every once in a while melt down, then I'm going to deal with it very differently. My ABCs, what I focus on, is going to be very different than if it happens all the time. Because you guys know, if it's just a one-time situation, you're probably not even paying attention to this live. This is not for you, because it's like, no, this isn't something I actually have to deal with. What happens if temper tantrums or fits are really not all the time? And they're really only every once in a while. So really, we don't have to give our children the tools to be able to handle it, but we can really just help them along. And what do I mean by that? So really, that would be a good time to just distract them, just to kind of get them out of that emotional bubble that they're in. And what do I mean by that? So if it's a young child, you could play a game, then bounce them on your lap and distract them with a toy, something they're interested in. And it's like, okay, we just want it to pop and go away. If it's an older age child, we can use humor. And it wouldn't be the nicest thing to say as the child is like really upset. Oh, by the way, like, why did the chicken cross the road? But even to introduce the idea, you know what? You're looking like you could use a joke. Would you mind if I, try to cheer you up? Something like that would really, it's fine, because, okay, every once in a while they're having a blow up. Or just to validate, you know what, this seemed like a really tough loss. How about we go for ice cream? There's something to be said where it's very atypical. And so distraction is really a nice way to just get them through it and get the family through it, so we can kind of move on and get everybody into the car and all is right with the world. And giving them their space to be able to handle that. So if it's like, okay, it's just a little while and they'll be fine, we don't have to draw so much attention to it. However, most of you, that's not really the case. And, a hug or, just touching, their arm or, or just walking it off is not enough, because it happens a lot. And when it happens a lot, that's a total game changer. That's something that, wait a second, like, I don't want to be the only thing that is creating a situation where my child is then able to cope and get out of a meltdown. And wow, like, if I don't do, what's going on here? Like this is a very long amount of time to be emotionally charged up. So that doesn't work if it's a recurring theme. If it's recurring, then really what we have to look at is we have to look at the ABCs. We have to look at and understand that it's time not only to, help them, but allow them to help themselves and develop a plan for them in doing so. And that plan we're going to kind of like go through based on scenarios to really understand how we can help our children through the meltdowns, and understanding for ourselves that at every point, we can conceptualize it differently. And the hope is that even just from discussing it tonight, that's helpful because it's educating and demystifying about what this meltdown really is and what it isn't. And that helps us to get calm when we don't take this like time machine and go like, oh my goodness, so if my child is doing this, then like, oh my goodness, they're just exploding. Like I can't, what will be? As parents, oftentimes we think like, oh my goodness, what's going to be? Like, this is going to be forever? This is what my child has got going on. Like, oh my goodness, this is not good. So really, let's understand together that we have this ABC, we have a story, and where we can involve ourselves in the story to really change the story. I don't know about you guys, but a long time ago when I was younger, I would read these choose your own adventure books where, when you got to the end of the page and you looked and it's like, oh, okay, so if I want the scarier version, I can turn to page 8. And if I want to go on like the calmer version, I can, turn to page 12. So, I think that for ourselves, if we start to look at fits and meltdowns and these moments of frustration as kind of in the ABCs, then if we do something to manipulate, to change around the A's or the B's or the C's, then really we're choosing our own adventure, because hopefully the fits and the meltdowns will change up and it'll allow us to have a different outcome. Okay, so what I was talking about before was really the A's, which are the triggers, things that result in, like they cause, in the sequence, the behaviors. So let's talk about those things. Let's talk about them. For example, the time that you want to give your child an expectation of any sort is really not when they're tired or hungry or overwhelmed, and you oftentimes kind of like don't think about it. But it has to get done. Okay, well, that's nice. It might have to get done, but you should just know that you're not headed in the right direction if you're overlooking those key elements. It's a shame that some of the most important things that our children are expected to do, or we want our children to do, are when they're tired. Like it's just, well, we want them to go to sleep nicely. Well, it's when they're tired. Well, hopefully. And we want them to wake up and do their morning routine and they're tired. So that, that's definitely a challenge. And that's something to be looked at and understood and kind of conceptualized. And then there's the sensory piece, which is, children do get more easily overwhelmed with, at least some children do, with noise sensitivity or light sensitivity or just being overwhelmed by the experience. There's a lot going on in a room. And we have to take a look at that when we're looking at like what we're asking them to do. In addition to which, structure is really important. Our children kind of need to know what their expectations, what we're expecting them to do. And so, in school, oftentimes, after a while, our children kind of understand what the expectations are because of the repetition. Well, maybe not this year because of Corona, but or last year, half of it. But in general, it's very important that when they have a roadmap and they know it and they've kind of worked it through and they know what the expectations are, then their overall sense of calm definitely improves, which is why, many parents tell me, well, my child had a complete meltdown. I took them, it was, for the first time to this really special place, and that is where they exploded. Well, that very special place for the first time, there we go, lack of expectation. And so, not the easiest time to expect the best. Or my child was fine, and then I took them on vacation, and they just completely fell apart. They were horrible. I would think that there was no school. Yeah, but there's also no clear guidelines as to what the expectations were. And that doesn't usually lend itself to some children in a positive direction. Children do like structure. As much as they say they don't, it's definitely a big piece to their overall equilibrium. And then when children are criticized, many children end up feeling badly and getting emotional. So if they're criticized, if they're embarrassed in any way, or they feel embarrassed, and that honestly, that can even be embarrassed among their siblings. I know many parents are like, well, I don't understand. We were just seeing it in front of the family. That by itself might be enough to lead to embarrassment. And also many children want attention. And so that is another kind of pull, where the jealousy pull, like those pulls really impact on whether or not the A's are going to be relevant to the right behavior. And a lot of times what I've just mentioned have to kind of be conceptualized because they don't lead to the right behavior. These are things that lead to the behavior being either not done or not the right types of behavior that you really want to be experiencing. So what do we do with that? So first of all, we have to think about that, and I'm going to go through a few scenarios. So we have to think about that and try our best to conceptualize that so that we lead to the best behavior. Now, what is the behavior? So the behavior is the thing that you want them to do. And ultimately, what comes from the behavior, whether they did it or not, are going to be the consequence, attention, reward, loss of a reward, feeling entertained, making a friend, feeling very frustrated. And as parents, when I was talking about like the stay calm, this is really important. Whatever then happens after the behavior, meaning your children are having a fit. So now how you react, how they get rewarded, or what the consequence is of their actions really makes a difference. And there are a few rules about that I just kind of like want to go through. So the first is, I don't know about you, but there's definitely a difference between getting a paycheck in the moment and getting a paycheck in 3 months from now. And depending on the age of your child, the reward, if it's too far away from the situation, is just not valuable. It's kind of like out of sight and out of mind, and children don't oftentimes experience this type of kickback or reward. Like you're like, yeah, well, you know what? I finally got around to it. I told them that I was going to give it to them. That's very nice. But children, especially, the younger the child is, like they don't believe that they're getting it. It doesn't mean anything. And when they do get it, they haven't actually like associated what they did with the reward. So in terms of reward, the timing is really important. Timing is really important actually with, the antecedents too, like the befores, but okay. The next thing is, I don't know about you, but if I am constantly reminded about what I did wrong and how this is never going to change and how this is so bad, and I have to kind of wear my scarlet letter for a week, it's like, wow, it's frustrating. It's like too much. In general, it's much better that the consequence of the actions not be for longer than the 24 hours and then we just start again. It's for those of us that are religious, it's kind of like we say that prayer in the morning, like, thank you for, giving me a clean slate and returning my soul. Like, it's really, it's nice to be able to just have the opportunity to have a clean slate and to start again. And yes, there are definitely some consequences that need to be for a longer amounts of time to really hit the mark. But in general, it would be really great just to have one where it's like one and done. The day is over, we start new, and kind of just end it right there. And so that really is important. And in general, it's better to not give than to lose. And what do I mean by that? Taking something away is a very serious indicator that there was something wrong. And in general, it would be better just not to give the reward or to, have a specific consequence, like something happens, but to take something that's already been earned and kind of pull it from them really has to be left for very serious infractions. That's something really, like, from that meltdown and temper tantrum or fit, something very serious happened that they were reminded and they were warned about, because otherwise, like, that's just too much. So I think that's important. And okay, in terms of the behavior, before we kind of get to the real life tangible examples, in terms of the behavior, as I had mentioned before, not all behaviors are the same. Most behaviors are ABCs, or just a matter of, okay, run of the mill. So they did it, they didn't do it, and I'm going to teach them, I'm going to model for them, it's going to be fine. Every once in a while, however, there are behaviors that happen that take on a completely different experience. And those are, every family has what I call family rules. And there are certain violations of family rules that are really extreme. And in my mind, I think the most important one is safety. So if a child doesn't feel safe, their body or their belongings, I generally recommend that kind of gets differentiated from all different other types of behaviors that we may or may not like. And so if that means that a child is being, is hurt in any way, or their stuff is damaged, then that would be kind of where, like, that infraction that I was talking about, like that more serious consequence should happen. But other than that, we're trying really hard to stay in the positive, and we're trying really hard to stay calm and focused and understand, this story. But those things just really aren't acceptable. And those things really should be differentiated in terms of how they're dealt with. Okay. So let's take an example, and I'm going to give an example of people that, that kind of already gave me a comment and and we'll take it from there. Okay. So how about this? How do I get my child ready in the morning? Okay. They, waking them up and trying to get them to, do what I want them to do. So the behavior is either make the bus or get up, get dressed, and get ready for school. So how do I deal with that with my ABCs? So let's start with the A's, right? So the A's would be all of the things that go into having a positive behavior experience with my children. So what are some of the triggers? So some of the triggers would be being tired, right? So that would be perhaps that they didn't get enough sleep the night before. So if I want my child to do the behavior of getting ready for school on time, number one, I should be focused on how to get them to sleep better the night before. Number two is, well, maybe there's too much that they're going to have to do to be able to get ready for school in the morning. So the night before, I do as much planning and preparation as possible so that they are able to do the behavior as I want them to do them. Number three, and this comes up sometimes, and I actually had a patient that this came up with. It's so disruptive in the morning because there's like a lot of chaos going on, and this child is like goes on to noise sensory overload that having timing is also a big piece, because if she wakes up at the same time as her siblings wake up, she is going to have to deal with their noise, running for who's going to get the bathroom first, and just and getting all upset, and that already leads to fighting and arguing with her sibling. And so timing really makes a difference. And so considering perhaps a rotated schedule, or a schedule as to when each one gets woken up. And you might say, yeah, but the noise is going to wake up. No. If someone's not designated that they have to get up, they don't have to get up. And if they want to get up from the noise, okay, that's one thing, but there's no expectation. Her siblings do not have to get out of bed before she does, but she is allowed, and she's told a couple of minutes in advance, like, if you would like to have it less chaotic, then you have this amount of time, and it's yours. Of course, this is not discussed, in the morning, but stuff is prepared in advance as much as possible. Sleep, we really focus on the sleep from before, and then just the chaos of what happens in the morning, the sensory overload, is really dealt with, or at least conceptualized. In addition to which, there, and I don't know, and I'm not saying that this is for every family, but what would be some sensory positives that might be helpful to having my child be able to do what they have to do and get ready in the morning? So the research shows that the sensory experience of smelling something delicious, like a delicious breakfast. So if you didn't have enough to do and you wanted to do more, you could be making pancakes in the morning before your child gets up. Truthfully, you could have, a perfume spray of pancake smell. You don't actually have to make the pancakes, but yeah, that type of experience. The research also shows that having a bright light and gradual noise, that the noise increases over time. So if you have like a music, or just, any sort of noise level, as it, gradually goes up over time, that is supposedly a way to help with the sensory experience of getting your child at their optimum for getting themselves ready in the morning. Okay, so that's the A's. Now, that is just a prevention. That's like thinking about the triggers. But essentially, what we really have to do is we have to empower them to do something to be able to get to their behavior. How could they deal with the experience so that they can do better? And the answer to that is table. It's a little bit harder to do in the morning to understand what it is, but essentially it is, table stands for trying something new, asking for help if you get stuck. So try, do as much as you can of getting yourself ready in the morning. And if you can't, ask for help. You guys have heard me before, my hanger spiel, do what you can and then just act like a hanger. And if you're just not talking and you're dealing and you're up and you're motivated, but you just I just can't, then, we can help you out. Sometimes, not all parents can, not all the time, but if a child kind of pulls a hanger routine, every once in a while, and they've done something else, but it's just, I really can't get those socks on, they're just not working, then that's okay. Because the overall process is that at least they're in it to win it, and they're trying very hard to be able to do what they have to do. B is breaks if needed. Now, in the morning, you don't want your child taking major amounts of breaks, but the truth is, it's okay if they are, if they're motivated and they're just tired and they take a second to just regroup, or, they do what they've got to do. And at the breakfast table, they put their head down, okay, we're successful, we're winning. They got out of bed, they're working on it. It's okay. L is little parts, just reminding and understanding it's little parts at a time. there are some people that don't want to be there in the morning with, telling their kid what to do. And visual reminders, having that cue card of on the board or whatever on the wall, kind of reminding, remember, before you get down for breakfast, remember to have your shirt, your skirt, and bring the socks and the shoes down, and we're ready to rock. But understanding with them, and it'll come up in some other examples a little bit more, but really little parts are fine. And then finally the E, right? Table. So TABL, and E is enter into an agreement with them. That is the time to, that we are reminding them and reminding ourselves, like, we can do a little bit, they can do a little bit, there's going to be a reward, whatever that agreement is. Like, if they're focused on it, they'll get downstairs in time. If you're focused on it, it'll get done. Part of the agreement, for some parents, and I don't know why, because this is just not the way of the world, but there's this idea of then, when, then, if, then, meaning after they do what they have to do, then they get to have or experience whatever it is that they had wanted. Parents are telling me, yeah, my child was so distracted by the video games that they were playing that they couldn't get dressed in the morning. Now, I am not, I'm not advocating, I'm not even commenting on video games in the morning. All I could say is that if they've already gotten, that part of the agreement, then you've lost. Like, why would they want to do anything different? But if they know that, the agreement, entering into the agreement, that the agreement is, you get whatever it is at the end of the experience when your checklist is done, then we have a chance. And then, there's an agreement that we can live with. So that would be the empowering way that they can then take their triggers, deal with them, deal with whatever it is to be able to get to the behavior, which means getting themselves ready, and finally the consequence of their behavior. And what does that mean? So the consequence of their behaviors is either the reward, the consequence, right? So the reward would be either a check on their flexibility chart, or what, the video games that were promised. Again, not recommending or saying anything else, but that would be the time to give it to them. Or that they could take, an extra snack to school, or a high five, or just spending time with you in the morning, or the hot cocoa, that extra one that they can take in the cup to bring with them on the bus. That's the time where they are now earning your attention, because that is a huge motivator. And for those of you that think, no, they only want, the reward, it's not true. The positive praise, the feeling of closeness, those comments of, this was a really great way to start the morning. I'm going to work and feeling really great. That really makes a difference. And oftentimes parents think, well, they know it. No, they don't. And, when you say something, it means a lot more than when you don't say it. So remind yourselves, say the positives, make the effort, the attention. Even if it's like, I hear oftentimes from parents, they're 10 and 12. Of course they should know how to do it. No, of course is not a reason not to give them the praise, give them a hug. Those hugs, those praises, they are like brownie points, because shortly thereafter, they're going to be a teenager. And if you start then, it's not going to be as easy. Definitely not. And for those of you that are tuning in that are, parents of teenagers, it's hard. And if you didn't do before, I'm not saying not to do it, but we'll have to watch another live on exactly how to say to your teenagers what you would be otherwise saying to anybody else of any other age. So, right. So those things, anytime that you draw attention to something, it makes a difference. It really is something that will either continue or be what we call extinguished, not be done. And as I mentioned, the rewards should be close enough. So even if they're earning something and so they need a lot of checks, whatever, on their chart, there should still be the positive, there should still be the effort, and there should still be, kind of treats along the way, because that really helps. And so in that way, you've kind of looked at how I get to this morning process, my ABCs, and why I'm not just going to focus on the fact that like my child just woke up and gave me a tough time and had a massive fit and didn't want to get out of bed. Okay, so now I'm going to do another example of something that people had mentioned, and that is doing your homework. Okay, so many of you have complained that your child has a fit when you tell them that they should be doing their homework. So let's go through that. So first of all, let's go through like the triggers, right? So what are those sensory experiences that really make a difference with regard to the homework? So first of all, a quieter spot, Again, being tired or hungry, not a great time to do homework when you're tired or hungry. So when you're processing when you should be feeding them, when dinner should be, think about this. Some children come home and they're already tired and they do need to unwind a little bit, but if they unwind too much, then they start to get into a later hour where they're tired, their processing isn't good, and there's a good chance that they're just, not going to be able to do what the task at hand. Other people, are hungry, and really if you prolong it and don't allow them to eat dinner and not just a snack, sometimes a snack is good, sometimes it isn't. That also, is important. And then just looking at the sensory experience, like some kids, when they're doing their homework, they need a very quiet place. And so, already choosing a quiet place allows helping in terms of, trigger versus non-trigger. The lighting, is a lot of the research shows that if it's brighter lights, it's brighter conceptualization, and it helps a lot. So that's also important. Some kids need a special cushion or something to sit on to give them that sensory input, or a fidget. And there's all different kinds. You obviously don't want it to be something that's distracting, but let's just take into consideration that definitely the sensory experience is important. They're tired or they're hungry. Now let's get into table, because here table really is more relevant. So T is for try it, to start. Start without me and see how far you go. Now that doesn't mean that every child can do this, like for sure not. And the truth is, when you're first trying to get into a routine with your child about how to do their homework, it really would be a good idea to try it a little differently than just, do the best you can but you want to really sweeten the deal. So maybe the first couple of times you really do a lot more hand-holding. You are like there and present and very explicit about, that the demands are not too much. We'll get through it together. You have the most choice in what you're going to do, really to give them a good feel for actually doing their homework. And I'm not just talking about, 6-year-olds that are doing their homework for the first time, but many kids, do fine with their homework, and then they get to a certain grade or a certain point or a certain teacher, and it's harder. And that's where you start to see, oh, wow, I actually have to teach my kid coping tools on what to do about homework, because it's not, they were always able to breeze through it and they never gave me a tough time. And now all of a sudden it's not going so well. And that could happen, in 4th grade when the work shifts and the expectations and the demands and the conceptualizations change. It could be at the beginning of middle school, when they start to have multiple teachers and it's just a lot more overwhelming and it's a lot more independent work. Homework is one of those things that, you can glide until you can't glide anymore. There are certain subjects that, people can be intuitive and pick up, and then other ones like, no, you actually need to have the exact conceptualization, like the rules, otherwise, it's not going to happen. So, or, with essays. So in any event, so it really is important that if you want to be able to set a certain type of homework experience in your home, it would be great if, at least to start with, what you did was you allowed your children to have a sweetened experience. You're there more, you give them more choice, you do it with them, like you get through it. And so it's not so much about just try it by yourself, but it could be try it with me. Like, let's try it together and see how that goes. So that's the T. A is ask for help. When children feel like they're just not going to be able to do it, or it's going to be hard or demanding, or in any way it triggers them, like what we were saying, either embarrassment or critique or just a lack of structure, and they don't know what to do with it. So they tune out and they shut off and they're like, no, I can't, I forget it. But if they also understand, no, it's not just that. We have 3 different kinds of problems. First, you try it for yourself, small problem, but then ask. Like, I will get through it. I'm not going to judge you, and please do not, because otherwise they won't ask again. I like the refrain in a home where it's like, okay, just ask me and I'm going to help you. So do you need any help? Do you not know anything? Like, I don't understand. Did you not learn anything in school? Like, whoa. No blazing guns. Like, that's not the time to be saying that, because they were asking. Now, does that mean that you have to do their homework for them? For sure not. but let's partner together and try to figure it out. And there are some subjects that you're going to need my help for, some experiences, yes, some no. And it really is important. Like if they keep on asking you for help and they clearly don't know, that's a really great indicator that there's something in the learning process that's happening either in the teacher experience or in the learning experience. And it really is a nice thing that you have the opportunity to be able to get them to be asking you. The B is taking breaks. It's not, I remember reading a study from Harvard that the natural attention span is 20 minutes. And that would be for someone who's just, is a typical, has a typical attention span. So let's give the understanding, it doesn't have to be, take a break and, and go play games and come back in an hour. But I do think that it's fine for children, teenagers to be able to take a break, chill for a minute or two, or three, get their bearings, like they were in their work, like it's okay. Now I know transitions are hard, so if your child really has a difficult time with transition, it probably wouldn't be the best idea to, not to have a plan about the breaks. But, every system could include breaks. And I oftentimes with parents have the system where if they come back from their break in an appropriate way, that gets a check, that gets rewarded, that by itself gets reinforced, so that it really is more a function of, that is part of the reward system, because breaks are important, but they're also kind of difficult to kind of get back and forth from. Sometimes kids break per subject, sometimes it's per page, you can kind of play around with it and see what works for you. Timing really is a big deal. So if your child spends too much time on one particular thing, it's kind of like that goes into their memory bank of, oh my gosh, that's my worst subject. No, it was just your most time consuming one. And it doesn't mean that actually is your worst. And it's something something to consider. So again, that's the B for taking breaks. And then L is, a little at a time. Again, on the first rodeo, when you're just kind of trying to set things, it's okay. And I oftentimes, ask parents to speak to the teacher and partner with them. Listen, my child has been avoiding their homework and now they have 100 assignments to do. Can they skip a here and there and whatever? And eventually the goal is, I guess, work in its entirety, which would make sense because it's matching with the group, what the expectation is for everybody else. But to begin with, it's not the worst thing to at least implement a system where it's a little bit at a time. And finally is the E. You enter into an agreement with them. So at first it would, I don't mind if it's, okay, so, you do all of them and I'll do one on the page, or you do all of them and the teacher said you can skip one, or you do all of them and this happens, right? So I think that by entering into the agreement with them, it really helps them to have the structure and the tool to be able to say, okay, so there's an agreement that I'm following a system, I'm following a process, I can get through it. Okay, and then finally, I think it's really important that we reward children for, following in whatever system. So even for homework, which I know parents, they were supposed to do their homework. Okay, but we're all supposed to do everything, and it doesn't mean that we do. And what gets reinforced and what gets rewarded really is repeated. So it wouldn't be the worst thing to then give them the praise, which is important, and have a reward system with them to start with. Now, that reward system can change over time. Getting back to my flex chart, being flexible could be the same thing as doing their homework every night. And the first series of them is really, that you do for 5 times and you get a reward. So 5 times that they do the homework, or 5 subjects that they do, they get a treat, something. And then we can extend it because the next series could be 7 and a treat or reward. And the next series could be 9 and a treat and a reward. It really is important that we give the consequence to their actions, the good things, like it's great. And I think that it is really important that we are reminded that it shouldn't be too far away, that it should be something that's agreed upon. If I want to give my child a Slurpee and yet, they don't want a Slurpee, they actually wanted cash, then that is absolutely not going to work. That's not motivating. If you offer your teenager a Slurpee and they wanted money, that is just, no, mom, like, sorry. Or, you know what, don't worry, darling, you can have an extra hour before bedtime. Like, no, I don't think that that's going to be motivating at all or enough. And the natural consequence of their actions are also good, right? So if it is, something that, they were supposed to do their homework and they didn't, and the teacher, is going to be involved with it, like that's on them. But time management, I oftentimes feel, is really important. So if they haven't managed their time to be able to do their homework or, use their time effectively, then oftentimes the natural consequence of their actions is that the other things that they would have chosen for their time, whatever that might be, and every family is different, but those would be the first things to kind of like, well, I'm sorry, if you do this, then you get that. But overall, the positive relationship that you have with them really, really is important. Now, I want to switch gears for a moment because, again, questions came up about how do I deal with the calmness. And one of the really essential ways that children can kind of deal with their calm when they're having their fit, and I suggest this for parents too, is what I call the calm spot. A calm spot is a place that's designated in advance of having the fit, in advance of having the meltdown or the temper tantrum, that allows the child to feel like they have somewhere to go, and they either a beanbag chair or pillows to crash into, or their room or their bed or an area. I have a patient who chose the bottom of the walk-in closet on the bottom because she has 9 children in her family and there's never a good spot, and she found this one spot and she's like, listen, if I'm going there, Mom, just make sure that nobody is getting their jacket and taking away my place. But it's really a place that's designated for them that has the following in it. So it has stuff like, now some children don't need anything to calm down, but many of them do. And so when you just tell them like, okay, go to your room and calm down, like that's like saying, here's a blank piece of paper, go write an essay. Like that's a lot. That expectation is oftentimes too much. But if in advance of it, you've kind of like walked through with them. So, sometimes we both get riled up. And when you do, what are those things that you would like to have available to you? And I'll make sure that happens. Like I will protect your space and your box, a calm box. So if it's a bottle of water, if it's a notepad and, or markers, art medium, music, reading, photographs. I have this one patient, and really what she likes to do is go through old family albums. So her calm spot is in a room that has the albums, and she literally will go through, and even when she's angry, she'll like turn the page quickly, but she's looking. And I guess, kind of like what I had said before, like taking that away moment, that really just brings her a sense of, whew. I have another patient who is really into gymnastics, and so she kind of calls the basement as her calm spot, and she will jump and flip and just kind of get it out. Or, I am an advocate of whatever emotional charge you want to bring to that calm spot, you can. If your child is really, really angry and they're going to rip paper or mutter or, even scream, loud, but they're doing it in their spot, then that's not an infraction. That's like them getting and relax and kind of going to their place. So if your children are both together having a fit, by the way, and each one has their calm spot and each one gets rewarded for going to their calm spot, both with the fact that like, this is your place and it's yours and you have like good stuff that otherwise don't get. Like I don't take their stuff out of their calm spot and be like, oh, so you're in the middle of drawing? Like, okay, continue with it. No, that's like a special set of markers and a pad that is really unique to their spot. And in doing that, like it really strengthens the resolve to be able to go there. And sometimes kids don't want to go there because it's like, go to your calm spot. No, it's like, go to your calm spot. Like that's your spot. I'm not going to take that from you. And when you come back, I will, we will continue. I will then address whatever it is. My big belief, and I'm going to really end with this, is we don't negotiate with terrorists. What do I mean by that? When your child is all riled up, that's not the time to be talking to them. And I wouldn't, because it goes to like what the consequence is. So if the consequence of them having a meltdown is that they get your attention, then you're going to be getting that a lot. But if the consequence to them going to their calm spot is that you get their attention. They have your attention afterwards, and they really do. And it's like, wow. And you got to check, flexibility, then forgoing. That's amazing. Parents, you can have a calm spot too. It is really okay. And getting back to that staying calm mentality, it's actually a wonderful thing to be able to tell your kids, I'm going to my calm spot. I will be back in a few. And when I'm doing that, like, you're modeling for them. Remember what I said, like, calm, right? Is children always learn from mommy or from the model. Like, then they know, oh, that there's a value to that. And like, mom's doing it too. So if mom could do it, then it can't be so bad. Like, she really is putting her money where her mouth is. And in that way, we kind of just break the cycle of getting that emotional charge up and allowing everything to calm down. So thank you all for tuning in. Now, next week, we are going to be empowering in a different way. I am so excited that I'm going to be doing a live. And this live is with someone who is very flexible, but not flexible in the way that I have been describing, but rather flexible. Her name is Liba Yaffe, which I'm sure you all know of. So Liba Yaffe is amazing, and she is Spirit for Fit Life. And I'm going to be doing one with her and her daughter about what it's like. She is incredibly flexible, but physically, but empowering from, strengthening body, and able to have achieved tremendous success with, her physical self, but really like what it's like to be so motivated and to do what she does. And we have so much good stuff to share. So tune in. Please give me your questions and your comments, because the idea of meltdowns, fits are really significant. And the more feedback that I get, this is what I worked on, based on what you guys said, the better I'll be able to help those of you with empowering March. So thanks for joining. Bye, guys.